As good as the top 10 albums of the year lists always are, they're incomplete. They always forget the EP, which a lot of people don't dabble in the short form recordings, but it's a must at this point. A lot of great bands put out EPs rather than albums, and if you miss out on a lot of these, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be sitting around waiting for a full length when you could have great music at your fingertips. Darrell here, counting down my list of the top 10 EPs of 2013 so far. And we'll get right into the list here. At number 10 was a band that actually brought up a lot of nostalgia for me in name and in sound as well. The band Sleestack from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, put out their new EP called The Book of Hours. And the name alone harkens back to the TV series Land of the Lost, which some of you may remember and most of you probably don't. But, you know, it hit home for me. It was a show that I watched. But anyway, the EP itself is interesting. If I had to describe it in one word, interesting. And that would be hopefully enough to get you to go, maybe I should check that out. But it's got this really weird kind of psychedelic groove to it. It brings back kind of memories of the 70s style psychedelic prog, which I really enjoyed. And they kept the lyrics true to the name, true to the inspiration for it all. Which again, you know, if you haven't watched the show, you might not totally get it. But they did a great job putting this EP together, and you get a lot for the money, a lot of bang for the buck, a lot of extra things tacked on there. So I suggest you head over to their Bandcamp. That would be sleestack.bandcamp.com, and check it out. You might enjoy it as much as I did. You might not, or you might enjoy it more than I did. Either way, Book of Hours comes in at number 10 on our list of the top EPs. Now, just ahead of that, number 9 is a band that proved me wrong in a way. I had reviewed the album Shadows Over the Cosmos by the band The Howling Void. It's a one-man project, so I guess I can't really call it a band. And Shadows Over the Cosmos did not sit as well as I would have hoped. There were a lot of the songs were long, and it just seemed unfocused. But the new Runa EP sees the one man in the band, Ryan, actually focusing his efforts a bit more and giving you 17 minutes, 2 tracks of really atmospheric melodic doom metal. And it's really enjoyable. I can't really come up with anything in there that you wouldn't like. If you like kind of the traditional slow doom sound, it's there. There is that bit of atmospherics to it, which is even better. And as I said, it's focused. It's very refined, and it's hard to believe that this is the same person and the same project that put out that album a couple of years ago. But, you know, it's one of those things that I know I noted in the review that you can't write a band off. You can't listen to an album and hate it or dislike it or, you know, pass on it and then just assume that band falls off the face of the earth because you might miss a great offering later. And I definitely would have had I not given Runa a shot. So the Howling Void's Runa EP comes in at number 9. You can get that at thehowlingvoid.bandcamp.com. Check it out, listen, and buy. So now number 8 comes from a band that discovered kind of, I don't even know how, but the band Unbowed, or Unbowed, which I probably should have at some point in the last 7 months figured out what it was, but either way, this was an album, it's a self-titled EP that I wasn't sure what to think of by the artwork, which is kind of has this raw aesthetic to it, but at the same time, the music itself is refined. It's kind of thrash mixed with modern melodic death metal, but it's the lyrics that really caught me. You know, there's a story there, and a lot of times in that style of music, as the music gets heavier, the story kind of goes away. So it was really refreshing for me to actually get, you know, the both elements of that together. You get the heavy music, you get some outstanding musicianship, which, you know, sometimes you don't expect from a band you've never heard, you know, because you figure, oh, well, if they were that good, I would have heard of them by now. But that's not the case at all. And, you know, you put those two things together, and you end up with an EP that's absolutely, it's fucking infectious. You end up listening to it more than one time, and that's kind of the key, I mean, to the list, but also to the band. You know, the list here, we're not talking about which one, you know, was the best one that I heard in one shot, but ones that caught me and that I've listened to numerous times since, and the Unbowed or Unbowed EP has been at the top of my rotation for EPs for the year. So definitely give them a listen. That would be unbowedofficial.bandcamp.com. Again, you can listen there, you can buy, and I suggest you do both. So now number 7 was a band that hit me last year with an EP, and this one tops that one by a long shot. Last year, Aleph Null released their Dale EP, and I remember being very, very, very impressed with what they were doing. You know, again, it's kind of like that psychedelic groove that you have, but they're so... The only word I could really use to describe this band is smooth. They just... Everything they do comes with this really well-rounded, well-polished approach. There isn't that raw atmosphere to it. It's very, very refined. So when they released their Belladonna EP, as I said in both reviews for both their EPs, there's nothing to dislike here. Everything makes sense. It all sits right. It's all placed perfectly. It's all played perfectly. And, you know, the last track on the EP is the song Solar Sail, which, you know, is the longest track, but it's also probably the best. It's got classic metal feel to it, and there's something there that just reminds you of Ozzy Osbourne or Sabbath. It's weird the way they mix those two together, but you know, if you want one EP that you could check out, you know, from a band you've never heard of, this might be one to check out. The Aleph Null Belladonna EP, you can check that out again at their Bandcamp, alephnull.bandcamp.com. And again, this is why Bandcamp is so great. You know, you get bands putting albums and EPs up there, and you can listen to it as much as you freaking want. But, you know, one click and you can give them a couple bucks and make their day and make sure they have money to record their next album. So now, we are all the way down to number 6 so far, and the band Facade takes that spot. And they came at a time when I, you know, waxed poetic about the idea that the death doom genre was kind of laying asleep and laying dormant, and there just wasn't anything exciting coming. Well, this band changed that. It's a self-titled EP, and they reincarnated my belief that death doom is one of the most versatile and powerful subgenres in metal. You get great musicianship here, and you have to remember that a lot of these bands are self-producing and self-recording this stuff, you know, and if they're hitting a studio, it's not like they're going in with $1 million budget, you know, to do a bunch of pitch correction and overdubs and everything else. A lot of this stuff is done, you know, in a live way. So when you take these 6 guys and throw them in a room together, you get an amazing array of death doom tenets here, and they hit it harder than most of the major established bands. I mean, I would say that I've listened to this EP more than I've listened to, you know, Draconian in the last 6 months, because I think they're nailing it, and they're doing it on, you know, little to no budget. So that makes it all the more impressive. So definitely, if you're in the mood for some harsh death doom with some fucking amazing vocals and great musicianship, then Facade's debut self-titled EP might actually be the place for you. We'll touch on, you know, that style again in a little bit. But at number 5 is an EP that, you know, I think I've taken some shit from some people when I posted the review that it wasn't metal enough, whatever. We were fortunate enough to stumble on an EP, and it doesn't really have a title, by a band on the Torn Flesh Records web label, and it's a one-man cello project, which expands in the live setting, but Christopher Brown and his Vile Eye Chaos moniker destroyed damn near everything I listened to this year. Cellistic black metal. I mean, you take, you know, something like Apocalyptica, you know, where they play the cello, but they're playing interesting compositions, a lot of which float back to the classical side. You kind of lose track of the fact that they are a metal band, I guess. Christopher Brown, on the other hand, is making black metal on the cello, and it's funny because you can hear it. You can hear how it all comes together, how it makes sense as a black metal album. And you could also superimpose guitars over it in your head, and you know damn well that it would be probably the best black metal album that you could find. Now, the album is good enough. He does a fantastic job. I mean, the layering of the parts is incredible, and it all makes sense to me, and it hit me pretty hard. And I like when people, real artists go outside the box, and that's what he's done here. But if you get a chance, watch his live videos doing showcases and stuff, because you will be blown away by what he and his cohorts are accomplishing on the live stage. I think they could turn a lot of heads, and I think they could also bring a lot of spotlight to this style of music. So make sure you check that out. Now, that is available on the Torn Flesh Records Bandcamp, which is tornfleshrecords2.bandcamp.com. You'll find the album there. And this one absolutely is worth every penny you could possibly float his way in any form. I don't care, send him a check, because we're looking for more. And his appearance on the North Song album, which was fucking awesome, and they have a split coming as well, I believe. Keep an eye on this guy. Now, at the number 4 spot was another band in that Death Doom realm, as I mentioned before, the band Soliloquium, and we were lucky enough to have this kind of floated our way via email as a submission, and this was the one. This was the awakening for me, and I think this helped me to discover and enjoy Facade even more. These guys are absolutely fucking killing it, and it's only a 2-piece, and these guys are doing amazing things. As I said about Facade, I think this is an EP that dwarfs the last output of Draconian. As much as I hate to say that, it is a favorite of mine, but these guys just absolutely blew me away. You get just, if you want something just crushing, there's nothing wrong on this EP. There's just nothing wrong. The song Remnants of Dying Dreams absolutely blew me away. The drum fills alone would be worth the time listening to the EP, but put it all together with some fucking amazing guitar work, very detailed, and they managed to balance the intricate with the heavy. It's not just one or the other. And that's why their concept of Escape demo, it's really a demo, but it's kind of an EP, I guess. That's why it's going to come in at number 4 for me, because this one is Death Doom at its finest, and hopefully they get picked up and we get more from them in the very near future. The top 3 were tightly contested to a degree. Number 1, I think, kind of ran away, but 2 and 3 were very close based on when they were discovered. First for me was the band Gracian, which San Francisco-based group featuring Jackie Perez-Gratz, who's also in the band Giant Squid. She does some cello and vocals on this album, and it's only 2 songs. It's Pearl and the End of Days, but this EP, it got a 10 out of 10 from me for good reason. I've listened to this probably 100 times, and I think it's just really out there, bizarre, and avant, and there's something so comforting about that. Her vocals are fucking haunting. Sometimes it sounds like she's a ghost in the room, which I think is fantastic. But it all, for me, came together, and I tried to spread this to a lot of people, and not everyone took to it. Not everyone was as impressed as I was, but, you get 2 tracks that are towering over the 20-minute mark, closer to half an hour, and you're going to probably do something right. And, there's kind of some bending melodies there, and the way, it's cello, bass and vocal, and drums, excuse me, and that alone is, a little bit out there, but, excuse me, it's actually one. Oh, damn. Yeah, I messed that up, huh? No, whatever. The fucking EP is great. Pearl and the End of Days from Gracian. You can get that on their Bandcamp. You'd also get it on vinyl, which no need for a CD there. I don't even think they're going to do one, as I read the last time. But the green and white vinyl, well worth it. So check that out. Gracian.bandcamp.com. Now, number 2 was a more recent entry, but one that I have absolutely been digging the shit out of. It's that new Moss of Moonlight EP, Winter Wheel. And, I've talked about this recently on podcasts and in my review, but this is another 2-piece from, Washington State, part of the Cascadian Independence Movement, which you should read up on, because I think that made the EP even more interesting. But the Beauty and the Beast aspect here that we've talked about in the 2 years of this site comes full force because you have, the grating black metal vocals from Caven Wagner, and then you get the soothing, otherworldly female vocals of Jen Grunegan, and the two of them together are an unbeatable combination. She plays drums, he plays everything else, and the way they're making this music is absolutely unreal. As much beauty as there is, there's also that much kind of abrasiveness, and it's well rounded, it's well refined, it's well put together. It never swings too far in one direction. There's always, each one has the other one pulling it back to that center line, and they managed to find a ridiculous balance here on 4 tracks. I mean, the EP is long, it's over 40 minutes, and so good. It just flies by. And a lot of the chanting in there, use of other languages, it all adds to the mystique and the kind of the imagery of the album, which, I mean, is captured perfectly in the artwork, that beautiful snowy picture. So the Winter Wheel EP from Moss of Moonlight comes in at number 2, a close number 2, but number 2 nonetheless. It is number 1 time, and this should come as no surprise to people who read the site, because this is an EP that I've talked about a lot, I've listened to even more, I've spread the word to everyone and anyone who would listen, and I am greatly looking forward to the next output from the band Tatanka. Their self-titled EP comes in at number 1 on my list, and as I said before, this wasn't really that close. I could have told you, when you asked me for this, numbers 2 through 10 were going to be difficult, but number 1 was not predetermined, but pretty close. I couldn't count the amount of times I've listened to this EP, and the best, I think I topped myself here in the review by referring to it as perfectly imperfect. There's a lot of great melodies here, a lot of great riffs. The musicianship of a band as a whole is fantastic. And the vocals are slightly off, but perfectly off. And that might not make sense, it might sound like a cliche oxymoron or whatever you want to call it, but it all works, and this is a 4-song EP that you could listen to 100 times and it would feel like once. It just flies by in every possible way. You get everything here, and there are, the drumming is fantastic, the bass work. Now, a lot of times I had this discussion with a cohort who said he never really notices the bass work, and I picked out one song in particular and said, hey, check out the bass line here. And all of a sudden now it's like a revelation where you can now hear the bass line in every song. Guitar melodies are fucking awesome, and it's just beautiful. It really is. And you don't really understand what you're missing until you get on it. So I suggest that you check out this Vancouver band, tatankamusic.bandcamp.com. They captured the beauty of the American buffalo on a beautifully crafted progressive rock metal album. And I know they have some stuff in the works. I think it was a concept album is next, which I am all for. But you can get on their EP on their Bandcamp page, and it's got the name your price option. And if you want to grab it for free, I suppose you can. But throwing them a couple bucks, that would be the right thing to do. So definitely check them out. Tatanka at number 1, and it's going to be a great second half of the year. There's a lot of stuff coming out, a lot of new bands to discover, a lot of great shit on the horizon. But after our top 10 artists, albums list and the top 10 EPs list, I'm curious to see how it shakes up at the end of the year, because that's how you'll know how good a year it's been and how good each half of the year has really been. So there you go, guys. 10 EPs that you should check out. All the way from 10 to 1, Sleestack, The Howling Void, Unbowed, Aleph Null, Facade, Violi Chaos, Soliloquium, Gracian, Moss of Moonlight, and finally Tatanka. Sorrow Eternal's top 10 EPs of the year so far. We'll be back next week with another regular podcast, another set of reader-submitted questions, and a ton more reviews to talk about. So, guys, keep an eye on the site, and we will catch you guys next week.